and on behalf of SPJIMR Institute of Management and Research, India. So the theme for the first step conversation series is responsible innovation among family firms. Go to the first slide, please. Yeah. So just a little about the STEP Project Global Consortium and what it is about. The STEP Project Global Consortium is an initiative which is launched to explore entrepreneurial practices within family businesses. And it's an international research forum. I think at last count, if I'm not mistaken, Arpita, we have about 32 affiliates or 34. How many are there?
We have 38 affiliates, almost 40 affiliates.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So about 40 affiliates from all over the world. And it's an international research forum which strives to promote transgenerational entrepreneurship within family businesses. So all of us are also working together. For those of you who are not part of the STEP, it would be a great idea for you to join the STEP Project Global Consortium as well. A little about my institute, SPJIMR Institute of Management and Research, which is located in Mumbai, the financial capital of India. This is an institute which has been ranked #1 in FT rankings this year and 40th globally in the MIM rankings list. We are one of the top 5 business schools year after year. And the STEP Project Global Consortium, the STEP Conversation Series, is brought to you under the aegis of the Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship, which is a center for practice where we are training members of the second generation and the next generation in management practices. Okay. Our guest for today, our keynote speaker, Dhanashri, move on, is Dr. Professor Alfredo De Massis. He is a professor of entrepreneurship and family business at the Free University of Bolzano. He's also associated with IMD Business School, Switzerland, and Lancaster University, UK. He's an extremely well-known name in the family business space and has been one of the inductees into the Family Capital's top 100 family business influencers. He's also been inducted into the Family Business United's Hall of Fame. And I think we are in awe of you, Alfredo, and the way you're able to produce research. So thank you very much for accepting our invite on behalf of the STEP Project Global Consortium. Thanks.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. The keynote speaker, the practitioner keynote speaker who will be joining us today at around 6 o'clock is Mr. Harsh Mariwala. Mr. Harsh Mariwala is the chairman of Marico and the managing director and chairman of Kaya Limited. Marico is one of the well-known Indian corporates. Started off as a family business, but today is kind of a leading light for the professionalized family businesses in the country. Mr. Mariwala himself established the Marico Innovation Foundation in 2003. He started the Ascent Foundation in 2012, which helps entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurial journey. Other kinds of initiatives also have been started by him, and he has been awarded with all kinds of prestigious accolades and awards. So a very warm welcome to Mr. Mariwala as and when he comes in. We'll kick off the conversation series straight away. As we said, the theme for today is responsible innovation. Let's understand what is innovation and under what context does innovation take place. So innovation occurs within contexts of uncertainty and change, and it involves extremely complex systems. As such, the kind of thinking that we call as responsible thinking has to be associated with flexibility, creativity, and leadership. But responsibility itself is not a static construct, right? It's something which has to keep on changing. It's an ongoing process that has to respond to new or unexpected insights or events. If we look at responsible innovation, one definition of responsible innovation is that you're anticipating the unintended consequences or the questions or the ethical dilemmas or the social transformations which is associated with either products, processes, services, right? However, one would want to think of responsible innovations as more than just anticipating the unintended. One needs to reflect on the intended outcomes of any innovation and include questions like, what is it that this innovation is likely to do? How is it likely to change the world that we want to live in? And what kind of a world should we be designing, and whom should we be designing for? So I don't know, Alfredo, whether the construct of responsible innovation has found its place in literature so far, because we are looking at innovation per se, we're looking at technological innovations, but I don't seem to have seen the responsible innovation.
No, there is actually not much. Indeed, this is a very promising yet currently pretty much unexplored area in the family business.
Right. So I'll just jump into, you can skip that next slide, Dhanashree. I'll skip into the questions right away. So as I said, you have done a lot of work on innovation within family firms. And so what is, in your view, the role that family firms are playing and can play in this domain of responsible innovation, especially within the larger SEW goals that family firms have?
Thank you. Thank you, Tulsi, for this question, which is, very timely, because besides my research, I'm currently working also with a few entrepreneurial families that are, facing the very delicate and important issues of nurturing the next generation of responsible owners. So this has very much to do with, responsible innovation, which, as I briefly anticipated, is something where in the scientific arena, we don't really know much about, because it's a phenomenon, right, that is starting to take place, and we know that science takes place then to develop in a rigorous way. But what I can say, based on my research and also some conversations that I had with some family business owners, are two things. First of all, that, some of my studies about, society-centered goals, ethical goals, etc., are kind of clear in showing that currently there is a sort of divide between the willingness of families to engage in things like responsible innovation. And here I can say that, for a number of reasons, entrepreneurial families are very much prone to invest in responsible innovation, much more than their non-family counterparts. But at the same time, my research also showed that, if you look at the ability instead of the willingness, they are kind of struggling, because engaging in responsible innovation means putting aside the number of things that sometimes can become a reality in family firms. It means, letting family members understand that, inheriting shares doesn't mean that you are a responsible owners of these shares, and things like this. So there is a divide between the willingness and the abilities of these families. Now, this is one point. Another point is that what I observe is also that there are some generational effects. More and more, when I speak with the next gen, I can say that there is an increasing rise of the importance attached to responsible innovation. Next gens, as compared to the previous generation, are very much, in favor of things like this. And I can also say that when we, look even at the investment, let's say, realm, again, we can say that responsible innovation is something that is currently attracting much interest. Indeed, for instance, the Observatory on Italian Family Office that I have the honor to co-direct clearly showed this year that, impact investing and, paying attention to the impact of where you invest your financial capital, but also your social-emotional capital, plays a role. Now, as you correctly point out in this question, you mentioned SEW, social-emotional wealth, because we know in the family business literature that, this is a very important construct, as decision makers within family firms tend to consider, potential threats to their SEW when they make decisions, right? What happens is that if you consider responsible innovation, besides the social-emotional wealth, which is the wealth that you accumulate when a family pushes family-centered non-economic goals, you have other types of goals that are the society-centered non-economic goals. And so, this, in my view, further complicate, let's say, the mindset of decision makers these days, and adds another layer of complexity, because you will be seeing a new trade-off when they make decisions, because sometimes you make an investment decision that might be beneficial from a socio-emotional viewpoint, but maybe would be, detrimental to the pursuance of some sort of society-centered goals, or vice versa. And actually, we don't know much about that, and which is why, I consider this a very promising area for future research.
So very interesting, Alfredo. So you're now saying that in addition to the family's financial goals and the socio-emotional wealth goals, we could actually look at research which is directed towards the socially centered goals.
Yes, socially centered goals are still, in most cases, non-economic goals,
right,
but these are centered around society, rather not around the family circle. And family business scholars have seldomly, taken into account these types of goals, that even now, in the current context, right, after a pandemic, but, we know that we're living in a polycrisis, right, or perma-crisis, as the European Commission calls it. We had the pandemic first, then we had the energy prices, then we had, the crisis related to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, then we had, the labor shortage. I mean, we are living in a world where the crises are happening sometimes simultaneously, and especially in this kind of context, I think that the negative emotions, the physical and emotional vulnerabilities of family business actors are leading more and more to tensions among these family-centered goals and these society-centered goals. And so we, as scholars, but also practitioners, have the call, in my view, to understand, how these different types of goals can interact in shaping behavior.
Very interesting, Alfredo. That's a new perspective. I'm sure that the family firm scholars who are here are going to take note of. The second question that I would like to ask you is about the type of the process of innovation itself that has been seen in the case of family firms more than maybe the non-family firms. That a lot of the family firm innovation is linear and it's a closed process. So how do we integrate the open innovations in order to drive more of responsible innovations?
Correct. I think you are totally right. Closed innovation has been a paradigm in family firms that tended to be, very much, inwardly look and protective of their intimacy, etc. But we know, again, that the trend in the world is toward collaboration, right? The innovation.
Hello? We can't hear. Arpita, somebody has muted Alfredo.
Yeah, somebody has muted me. Now you can hear me.
Yeah. Just 1 second. May I request everyone to keep yourselves on mute? Yeah.
So I was saying that, but the trend is toward a more collaborative way of engaging in innovation, because again, more and more, different actors are called to join forces, which applies, of course, also and especially to family firms. But at the same time, we can't deny that if on the one hand, for a number of reasons, family firms are in a very advantageous position to embrace collaborative innovation, because, for instance, we know that they are very good, there is research on this, at developing long-term relationships, a stable relationship with external stakeholders, in many cases even personal ones. At the same time, we also know that when you embrace collaborative innovation, it means that you have to overcome all those fears, all those, all those worries, fears that threaten a families that typically is very much instead protective of its own intimacy, of its own environment. So, you know, I think that if you want to achieve great things, and if you want to really, you know, do things in the interest of society, there is no way of doing that, then, you know, through a collaborative approach, because this means that you have to go very far away from your current knowledge base, because this means that you have to, you know, to really be very much open to create and to work in a sort of ecosystem, I would say. And I also think that, you know, the fact that many entrepreneurial families who for many years have been very much anchored in their, let's say, operational family firms, over the last years have been more and more instead developing what I call a sort of galaxy. What I mean is that these entrepreneurs have started setting up different types of organization besides the family firms, like, you know, the family office, like the family foundation, like the family investment company, like, you know, the family incubators, whatever. And I'm observing more and more, if I compare what my observation only 5 years ago, these families that really create a galaxy. And of course, for mastering such galaxy, you need, by definition, to be open, because you have different organizations, and the glue that keeps all these organizations together is something very often informal. So I think, to make it short and to summarize, that definitely openness is becoming more and more a must. While there are some reasons to expect, you know, a very good ability of family firms to do so, at the same time, again, you know, the families that want to successfully embrace into such collaborative approach will have to overcome their inner fears and resistances.
So I believe that the bifurcation bias is going to play a very important role in the
Yes.
Embracing of the open innovation as a
Definitely.
concept in itself.
The bifurcation bias which is this asymmetric treatment of family versus non-family members, is going to play a role. Also, because we cannot forget that, you know, in general, even if this is not the typical attitude of family firms, but you need to be open actually toward the inclusion of non-family members, of outsiders, because outsiders are especially beneficial in order to pursue change and innovation, because they are less attached to the status quo, they are less emotionally attached to it, and very often can be really the leaders of innovation projects. So actually, some of my studies of innovation in family firms shows the very important role played by outsiders in serving as leader in innovation projects, whereas the family has a very important role in serving as champion. So distinguishing the championship, so the family can serve as a champion because the family is typically the political glue, you know, to catalyze attention, resources, whatever. But then you need leaders, and leaders should be ideally, you know, if you really want to change, should be less emotionally attached to the status quo.
So very interesting. So the family as the champion for the responsible innovations, while they're embracing outsiders to actually execute that change. How do you think tradition is going to act as a resource for these responsible innovations?
Yeah, I think tradition, you know, in many of my studies, I argue that tradition is a very important strategic resource for family firms. And I argue that actually we should look at the tradition of a family, of a business, of a territory as a resource. And the same way, you know, we look at, you know, financial resources, human capital, social capital, we have also something which is tradition. Now, again, you know, tradition can play a very important role for two reasons. First, in the current world, where there is a lot of uncertainty, as I was saying before, you know, it's very likely that the stakeholder of a family firms, internal or external to the firm, might get confused, get lost. Tradition, if you have a strong tradition, if you have a, you know, anchored in your own values, can be really acting as a sort of compass that allows the different stakeholders, you know, to be oriented. So tradition is something I mean, in the end, it's about your roots. And if you have a strong tradition, and if you are able to convey this tradition, which of course, means also mastering, for instance, some storytelling, means also, rhetorically using it. But this can be a very important resource. So that's the first important thing. In the current context, using tradition, it's a plus. It's a plus and can really help to keep the stakeholders engaged with you and oriented. The second important point is that sometimes family firms, when they have to embrace the way for the new, they are very much worried about dismissing the old, right? Because the past is something that is very much revered, respected. I have worked with some families where the next generation told me, I would not really even dare to speak in front of my mother or my father about this innovation because I feel that this would offend them, changing that much. Now, if you are able to use your tradition in order to innovate, which means realizing what I call innovation through tradition, in this case, you are somehow making even the senior generation more inclined to innovate because they will be less worried. So you basically let family members perceive that tradition and change, tradition and innovation are not two opposing antithetical concepts, but are instead some things that can mutually influence each other. And we can learn from the successful stories of many families that actually are very good at leveraging their history, their tradition in order to innovate.
So how would you distinguish between tradition and culture, Alfredo, as a resource?
Yes, that's a very good question. I mean, tradition and culture, of course, are, closely related, but are quite different. Mm-hmm. Because tradition, I mean, somehow, there are some cultural aspects. I mean, tradition can be about a number of things, can be in terms of raw materials, can be in terms of, manufacturing processes. You can have a traditional way of producing something, and, that's your tradition. Can be about beliefs. Many families have their tradition because they have specific beliefs that they hand over from generation to generation. Can be about product signs. Product signs are combinations of texts and colors that convey a meaning to a customer. Think about, for those of you who are into the fashion industry, for instance, the Missoni family, sweaters. You can immediately see the tradition in there. So, and of course, all these things have to do somehow with culture, but tradition is different, right? Because it relates to something that has been done and that has been established in the past. Now, these days, instead, culture is a broader notion, right? Culture can be contemporary, can be related to the past, can be related to the future. So I would consider this as quite distinct type of construct.
Sure. So, Alfredo, what are the challenges that family firms would face in the pursuit of responsible innovations, and what frameworks might we want to look at in order to resolve the theoretical aspect of the challenges to family firms?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that they are, I think, I would go back with the very fundamental point of understanding, what does it mean to be responsible as a family before embracing responsible innovation. Somehow we tend to give it for granted, but I can tell you that this is not at all the case. Actually, many families are currently suffering from, really trying to make sense of what does it mean, the word responsible or responsibility in association with their family. Indeed, there is, even in the consultancy market, a big demand currently, to help families, to create the next generation of responsible family members or responsible owners. This is, something that comes before responsible innovation, Yet, we should not give it for granted, because the assumption that inheriting shares makes automatically a responsible owner is not the case. And so, this is something to consider, especially because in the research area, we know in the research arena that family business research has been mostly dominated by management and governance perspectives. I mean, we all, as scholars, have been very much interested in producing new knowledge that could help these family firms to be better managed and or better governed, right? But we somehow very rarely took the perspective of the owners. And I think, to do research seriously about responsible innovation in family firms, we have to start from the owners. So, the first thing is, putting back the owners in, as key actors in shaping family business behaviors. Because in the end, many families, especially if at some point they create a galaxy, they become owners, during their evolution. Now, if we come specifically to responsible innovation, of course, there are challenges. There are challenges because if on the one hand, we know that the innovative behavior of family firms is distinctive, is unique. When it comes to responsible innovation, it becomes even more difficult. It becomes even more difficult because doing responsible innovation sometimes means doing things for the benefits, as we said at the beginning, for society. So it's something that doesn't bring probably much necessarily, neither to the pocket of the family, nor to their necessarily to their socio-emotional well. And so I think that here, a key point is to understand, for instance, how the dimensions of socio-emotional wealth, the 5 dimensions, for instance, of socio-emotional wealth interact with, the society-centered goals in shaping responsible innovation. Or, understanding how family business owners can resolve or at least manage possible trade-offs between different dimensions. Understanding when and under which conditions society-centered goals might prevail over family-centered ones in driving family owners' behavior in the current world, or vice versa, when the family-centered one would prevail. We are driven by the expectation that family-centered goals will be driving the behavior, but in many circumstances in the real world, I'm really observing instead the priority given to society-centered goals. Also, understanding how family owners define society versus family as a reference point. How do they frame decisions when utility at the society level are taken into account? These are all questions that, in my view, would require some serious research efforts in order to be addressed.
Sure. Thanks so much, Alfredo. We'll come back to you with some questions from the audience. I have the pleasure and privilege of inviting Mr. Harsh Mariwala. Mr. Mariwala, can we have the...
Hello.
Have you joined in, sir?
Oh, yeah, I'm there.
Good evening. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mariwala.
Good evening. Good evening.
So first of all, thank you so much for accepting our invite to the STEP Conversation Series. We've already started off with Alfredo, and I'll pose a set of questions to you. Okay. So, Mr. Mariwala, first and foremost, could you throw some light on what is the way in which you became an evangelist for innovations which have the potential to solve global problems, leave aside that of an emerging economy like India? So what is Marico's innovation story?
So in my early stage of business, Tulsi, my early successes arose out of some innovative approaches we took in the business. And if I look back at the history of Marico, I would say that whenever we've innovated, And when that innovation has succeeded, it has had a discontinuous impact on our growth. Mind you, we have had many failures, and failure is a part and parcel of innovative journey. So I'm not saying that every time you innovate, you succeed, you falter, but out of that failure, there is a learning which you can again apply to your subsequent journey for innovation, So my belief in innovation just went on getting reinforced every time I saw success and its impact on the business. And this happened many, many years back, and at that time, innovation was not on the top of the agenda of all the global companies. So at that time, when we found the very Co-Innovation Foundation and 20 years back, our objective was to fuel innovation, both in business and social areas, And I strongly believe that innovation has increased in India compared to what it was, especially with all the unicorns and the entrepreneurship drive, all the technologies coming in. But we still have a long way to go. And if you look at our big problems in India of healthcare, education, agriculture, I strongly believe that innovation can help us leapfrog in this journey. If my battery is going down 1 minute, yeah. So I think that will 1 minute. Let me just give me a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. Battery level.
No worries, sir.
Sorry. So I strongly feel that health, education, agriculture can play a huge role in India's growth journey. Just like mobiles, how they completely revolutionized the telecom sector. I strongly believe that with all the inputs of technology, innovation can actually help us solve many of our problems in future.
Sure. But when we are looking at today's topic, it is responsible innovation among family firms. And so when you're talking about family firms, coming from a family business background yourself, what is the kind of mindset that is required for disruptive and responsible innovations? And where do you think the role of the family businesses in such innovations would be? What is that mindset which may either hinder or it may promote such innovations?
So I think innovations happen in through dialogues. It doesn't happen in R&D lab or at an individual level. Most of the innovations happen at a group level, And I think for innovation, to create a perpetual innovation engine in any organization, you need to have very good talent. So I think one of the issues which the family firms face, family managed organization face, is the quality of talent, because there is a certain resistance from professionals to join a family organization. Because of some uncertainty. They are not sure whether will they be given freedom to do things, how will the culture be. Normally in a family managed organization, influence work. So will influence work or will it meritocracy? So I think for family managed organizations, the key thing is to create a framework for attracting talent and build a culture which is open culture, which is a culture which is based on trust, where there is no fear of failure, because the fear of failure is the biggest hindrance to innovation. We've seen that many times. You may have the best talent, but if there is a fear of failure and somebody fails, if the management punishes them by not rewarding them in spite of being worthy of a promotion or a compensation, then you are sending a very strong signal within the organization that you are only wanting to deal with successes. But failure is a part and parcel of innovation. And if you start punishing failure, then you are instilling fear of failure. If there is a fear of failure, people will stop experimenting. You can de-risk your financial impact of a failure by prototyping it on a small scale and learning from those prototypes. But the key thing is to encourage people to experiment, encourage people to think differently on a perpetual basis. And innovation is just not new products. It could be new products, it could be new processes, it could be a sales system. It covers the entire gamut of business and not just new products. Unfortunately, many people think innovation is equated with new products. Of course, new products are important. And then there is a set of disruptive innovation for which you may need to have a different approach completely compared to creating a culture of innovation.
Sure, sure. So we would be very happy if you could present on this global stage two of the innovations that were backed by the Marico Innovation Foundation, the Innovate to Cultivate and the Innovate to Beat COVID.
So I'll start with Innovate to Beat COVID. During COVID times, there was a lot of fear, and India was short in terms of PPE equipment, masks, ventilators, and the cost of doing that also was very, very high when imported. And also, we were not sure whether we'd be able to get the required quantities. So we started a Innovate to Beat COVID contest, wherein we announced grants of winning organizations, 3 organizations in these areas. And we had an independent jury. And the whole process was done virtually, wherein all the applications were done virtually. We had a jury, very, very high-powered jury, to determine whether these innovations are truly innovative. And I think we were able to resolve this, and we gave grants to 2 organizations, Noka, solar panel cleaning robo manufacturer that pivoted and created a turbine-based ICU ventilator with an inbuilt battery and advanced features that made it par with other most high-end expensive imported ventilators. So we were able to offer ventilators at a much, much lower cost compared to global costs.
Oh, okay.
And Korea Worldwide, which also designed and made bags and accessories for brands, switched to manufacturing PPE gear to help frontline corona workers. Because one of the applications that offered a complete PPE kit consisting of a face shield, parka, overall, modified specially to protect second line of defense. And the numbers which we gave a grant of 2 crores in this, and 14.3 lakh masks were delivered through this, 6.7 lakh PPE kits were delivered, and these innovators supplied 633 ventilators at a much, much lower cost compared to the global cost. So that was the first one. And then we did Innovate to Cultivate Challenge for Agriculture. This was done in 2018. MIF's first sector-specific program focusing on innovation in the agriculture sector and providing innovators building solutions in agriculture space with access to farmers to learn their behaviors, their adoption strategies, and prototype the innovation. And in that, we identified 6 breakthrough technological innovations to enhance coconut productivity. And we are working now with coconut farmers. Marico separately working as a part of his CSR initiative. We work with 80,000 coconut farmers in Tamil Nadu and Kerala and Karnataka. And there, we provide them a lot of inputs in terms of innovation, best farming practices. And we've seen a consistent yield improvement of about 15%, which means on an annualized basis, if you just look at the value of extra yield they're getting, is close to about 100 crores. So 100 crore extra income has gone into the farmer's hand just through better farming practices, through innovative approaches. And I am sure this is just we are scraping the bottom. In the area of agriculture, a lot more can be done. But innovation can truly put us into a different league and help us leapfrog our challenges, as I said earlier, about agriculture, healthcare, and education.
Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. In fact, I've also been following your innovations in terms of reducing the plastic use and optimizing on plastic waste. So if you could tell us a little about the MIF initiative of those innovations.
So, Tulsi, as you know, we consume a lot of plastics. And one of the ways the Parachute as a brand has succeeded, we make Parachute coconut oil and another Parachute range of products, is because we convert the business from tin to plastic. And that gave us a much higher market share. So whenever I talk about the Parachute story at any event or at a college or wherever there was an audience, and I mean, it helped us, but the question to me in the open question answer session was that, but plastics is so negative, you know. Right. And that really haunted me. So when the team of Marico Innovation Foundation came back to me and told me that, can we do a study on plastics? Can we reuse plastics, replace plastic, recycle plastics? And towards that, can we identify innovators who can make this happen? So we launched a study last year with Indian Institute of Science and Praxis Consulting. And they came with a set of 14 innovators in different areas to reuse plastics and make them pallets and use them in construction industry. There are machines which sort out the waste which goes from households and sorts out different types of plastics, including brand-wise sorting. And now we release a report, and now we are in the process of prototyping some of them. We are helping many organizations scale up. If somebody wants to connect it to, say, a plastic manufacturer wants to get connected to L&T for, say, building materials replacement, because these can be they replace many things like cement, steel, and things like that. And we are also planning to work with municipal corporations in creating a circular economy, because a lot of plastic gets used at homes, but it is not collected properly, it is not recycled properly, and it is not cleaned properly. And so we see a opportunity for creating an end-to-end solution to recycling in terms of collecting plastics, recycling it, and selling and cleaning plastic and selling it back to the user industry, where there is a demand for used plastics. So I think our now next phase of work on this plastics report is to make an impact and not just come out with a report. And I was yesterday, so happened that I just happened to visit Niti Aayog, and they seem to be quite excited about this kind of thing. They said, let's prototype this. If you are able to succeed in creating circular economy, then we have enough funds, we can support you, we can get other municipal corporations to agree with you, because this is a problem which everybody realizes, that the dump and all that, people don't know where to, I mean, most towns don't know where to dump the material. So if you are able to offer something which is viable, then I think you would have played some role in it.
Sure. So earlier on in the conversation, Alfredo was talking about the shaping of innovations resting with the owners or with the founders. So given that in family businesses, the founder plays such an important role, how do you look at perpetuating the culture of innovations,
Yes.
which may be a founder-centric kind of a culture, but how do you kind of perpetrate it in the family business? And how has Marico done it? How have you done it in Marico?
So in my case, it so happened that, I was driving the agenda, and within the family at some stage, I started playing. I was the only person in Marico, at least, who was family. And today I don't even have an operational role. So the company has turned professional, but for a company which has many family members, you need to have an alignment within the family.
Sure.
How important is innovation? But innovation is very important, because if you have to succeed in business, you have to go on innovating on a perpetual basis. If you innovate once and stop, then it's a matter of time others will copy you. It's a highly competitive world. And if you want to succeed, then you need to differentiate it in the marketplace, and you need to create strong right to win. So if that is realized by the family, then innovation is very, very important to their future. Then alignment at the family level in terms of what needs to be innovated, what kind of culture is needed to drive innovation, what kind of talent is needed. So a lot of internal, shall I say, alignment within the family, and then take this journey forward and behave in the same way as any professional company does in terms of talent attraction, creating a culture, and experimenting, prototyping, and then scaling up.
I believe, sir, what is more important is this entire trade-off, the way it plays out in a family business between protecting the current balance sheet, right, versus looking at the long run. So while on the one hand, we're talking about family businesses as being patient capital, but I'm not sure whether, especially in the current context where there is so much uncertainty and change that is happening, would the pressure of trying to maintain the current balance sheet outweigh the need to innovate?
See, if you take that kind of an approach, Tulsi, you may be able to protect short term, but long term, if you just try and be protectionist in terms of not experimenting, not taking risk, I think it will mean the downfall of that particular firm, because you have to innovate, you have to experiment, you have to make some new forays in business. So I think that will be a very, very wrong thing for any family to protect short term at the cost of long term.
True. Do you see any trade-offs between, say, a family goal like that of cohesion, of harmony, versus innovation? Because typically, when I meet with the senior gen and the next gen over workshops and so on, the usual complaint is that the new gen wants to introduce technology, whereas the senior gen is averse to technology. So when you're looking at the process of innovation, how do you reconcile some of the conflicts or the tensions which might arise because of that innovation itself?
So you're absolutely right. When the new generation comes in, there is disruption in the thinking, because they're coming from different educational background, different ambition level, and there are about to be differences of opinion between the elder generation and the younger generation. So it's very important that I think this gets resolved. Otherwise, what will happen is everybody will be very frustrated. You need to have an alignment in this area, in terms of what is the empowerment given to the youngsters, what kind of new technology should come in. And to some extent, the elders will have to, if the youngsters are doing good job, if they're doing good job, that's a big if, then they will have to take a back seat and allow them to experiment and also fail to some extent. Because if you are in a status quo mode, then you are falling behind, You have to go on, you have to challenge the status quo on a perpetual basis. So I'm not for one saying that whatever the youngsters are saying will come out right, but if they're on the right track, then the family should give opportunity to youngsters, at least in small pockets, just to test them out. Otherwise, the business will be doomed for failure, I would say.
So maybe the senior gen needs to be sensitized to the concept of the stop loss.
Yeah, I think they should be, but you can always prototype. The biggest problem is, many things people think that innovation is a big risk. It is a risk, but if you do it on a small scale and then try and see the impact of that, and then if you are confident that it has succeeded, then you scale it up. So, but you can't take two positions where don't do anything or do everything. So you need to find some via media to resolve issues within the family.
Sure. So I think we'll open it up to some question and answers for both.
Separately, I think I'm just telling you because you're so passionate about family. I am about to write a column. I write a column for basically on companies. Today there's a column in Mint about the new leadership style. So how to improve about effectiveness, how to create culture. And there is a similar topic of family and businesses. We are going to write 12 to 14 articles, which will come in Economic Times. They have agreed to carry. So that will happen maybe within next month onwards.
Okay. And
I know, I think you know the person who is partnering, Mr. Dixit. That's what Masih Dixit. I think he's going to love the family man. So both of us are going to do it together. Yeah. Okay. But I think look forward to that. I'm sure many of you will find it very interesting.
Yes, definitely.
It'll be in the main editorial page of Economic Times starting from next month.
Okay, lovely. That sounds very good. Any questions for both our speakers? We have quite a few of our affiliates also who are here. So questions from our affiliates and maybe some of our students for the two speakers. Our Dean, Varun Nagraj, is also with us.
Okay.
Hello, thank you. And thank you very much to the speakers.
Hi.
No, it's lovely listening to you, but I'll let the others ask the questions first. Thank you.
Okay, Varun, maybe you want to ask your question.
Sure thing. I was trying to understand, so as Alfredo was discussing the sort of the third dimension, we talked about SEW wealth, we talked about economic wealth, and Alfredo talked about also the creation of social good as maybe a third dimension. So Alfredo, what would be the difference between the S in SEW, where, some of the wealth being created is your social status, is your social contribution, right, in the SEW, versus the societal good that we are talking about as a possible third entity?
Yes, no, that's a very good question. Thank you. The S in SEW, has more to do with basically something about the family, right? It's about the social status of the family, indeed.
Social capital.
Social capital, yes, social capital, but even, the reputation, for instance, right? One of the 5 dimensions of SEW is about the goals of, we as a family want to keep and maintain high the reputation of our family in the community where we operate. But anyway, everything is around the family, right? These are family-centered goals. Whereas the S, the social or society-centered goals in the other type of non-economic goals has to do with society, so it has nothing to do with the family. It's about, doing things for the goods of society and putting aside the family wants. Now, of course, there are some situations when these two different types of non-economic goals can be aligned, right? I do something for society, and this automatically or indirectly brings benefits to the family. But there are also circumstances where, they go completely in the opposite way. Maybe I do something good for society, but doing so, I have to, expose my family to some sort of things like that are detrimental to their own family-centered goals. And so, understanding this trade-off when there are trade-off, understanding whether there are positive relationships, negative relationships between these different types of goals is something that is really unaddressed and unexplored so far. Even because, in the end, socio-emotional wealth is an umbrella concept. So socio-emotional wealth does not really, take into account the mechanism between, for instance, even the 5 dimensions, right? We don't know whether and how one of these shapes the other. Now, if you add an additional, category of society-centered goals, you have even further complete complexity.
In fact, to take that one step ahead, Alfredo, this is just something which is going on in my mind, that when you're looking at these socially centered goals, which are in a certain sense being seen as a third box outside, right? You're looking at the family goals and the SEW goals as more directed towards the family, whereas the socially centered goals are more externally directed.
Yeah.
There might be some socially centered goals which might lead to a positive for the SEW, but a negative for the family financial goals.
Yeah.
Or even the reverse.
Yes, because in the end, the society is a completely different system, right? As compared to the family. And so, there are different utilities, right? And understanding what guides an entrepreneurial family's decision-making in navigating through these trade-offs, it's important. I mean, think also about very simple trade-offs that, for instance, have emerged during the pandemic. Like, health versus wealth for families, or life versus livelihood, at the time when many people were dying. So, yeah, as you said, under bringing in the utility function of an entrepreneurial family, the society-centered goals, in my view, it's not only very realistic, but also very important.
Sure.
So the same question, Tulsi, for both Harsh and Alfredo. I'd like to hear an academic view and sort of a industry builder view. So if you look at sort of the triple bottom line, right, the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit, that is basically a tension, trying to achieve the right balance between the 3 things that regular companies, deal with as well. And, family businesses would also deal with the same issue of how does one actually make trade-off decisions between these 3 kinds of goals, right? So I'm expanding societal to also be environmental. So societal goals, environmental goals, economic goals, which is a 3P. Is there a fundamental different way in which family businesses look at this tension or balance between the triple Ps, as opposed to how a non-family business might look at it?
Should I go first, Harsh, or do you want
to? Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think so, while there is no systematic, reliable investigation that constructed a really, reliable body of knowledge demonstrating this, to my best knowledge, of course. I think so. And the reason is because families are different in the way they treat people, first of all, and there is research about that. For instance, we know that family firms are more inclined to develop superior relationships with their employee. We know that they attach much more importance to the people. They don't consider an employee just a number. In many cases, they become part of an extended. Some research by myself and other colleagues really show that there are a number of HR practices that go really beyond the traditional relationship in a non-family firm. So, I have reasons to expect that, with relation to the P of people, there will be a difference. Mm-hmm. At the same time, even in relation to the P of planet, there are studies about, for instance, the environmental, concerns, and also performance of family versus non-family firms. I recently published a meta-analysis showing that there is a distinctive behavior. So there are reasons to argue that families are differently concerned about the environment, and probably the reason why they are differently concerned about that is because by definition, this is a type of organization that is founded in order to survive for several generations. So, their perspective has really to take into account the place where these several generations will have to, live. So, at least if you consider these two P, there are some reasons to expect that there is something, distinctive. With respect to profit, the third P, again, financial capital is important, of course, both in a family firm and in a non-family firm, because we know that without financial capital, we don't have not even social-emotional wealth, right? There are studies that, they prioritize social-emotional wealth, but in the end, there must be financial wealth, otherwise it's impossible to pursue non-economic goals. Still, there are studies that say, for instance, that if you look at the profits, family owners are not really that much interested in short-term payoffs. They tend to prioritize, long-term payoffs because, they are very happy. I was interviewing these multi-generational family owners, and they said, I know that the profits of what we are doing today in terms of investment, the payoff will be benefit not even by my grandchildren, will be there probably the next generation, the generation after that. But we can do that because we are a family firm, which is something that it's impossible in a non-family firm where, by definition, the manager or whoever, has a much shorter time horizon. So, in the light of all these things, there are reasons to expect that the 3P will be dealt in a very different way if you are within a family firm or within a non-family organization. Yet again, I'm not aware of any rigorous academic study touching exactly upon this point. I hope I answered.
Thank you, Alfredo. Thanks.
So, Mariwala.
Your view?
Yeah, I think there are firms like those who are participating in the business family companies on a day-to-day management basis. Now, there is a company like Marigo, which is the biggest investor of the family. And I think the key thing is the family's values and what do they see and how do they continue over a period of time. But there's a larger issue which Varun mentioned, that there's a trade-off. I really don't see any trade-off between people, planets, profits. Because if you do anything good for your own people, they'll be far more motivated to work. That will show in profits. If you do again something back for society, it will help you improve your image. And most of the investments in sustainability and in all these areas to improve planet, they have a good payback also. So I strongly believe that the relief has to come in, and all of them are interconnected. If I am ignoring planet, then I will get a backlash from my own employees as well as from potential employees. They may not join me because they need to work with an organization which has a purpose, and increasingly youngsters are demanding more and more. So I think there is no trade-off, first of all. And I think management should realize that it is worth investing in all these three together because all of them are interlinked. And for a family, I think the family has to realize that and ensure that there is continuity in this type of thinking from a long-term point.
Sure. We have just one more question for Mr. Mariwala. Antriksh, please shoot your question.
So my question is how the investors look at this point of innovation. because the private equities which are investing in the family business and taking them through the IPO route, how do they look as innovation, or how do they look as especially responsible innovation as a factor? Because for them, I think they would be trying to get the tested formula, which is the business which is currently running, and take that only forward rather than trying something new. Your views on that, sir?
No, I think first of all, if they will have to evaluate how their innovation, whichever innovation we're talking about, how is it viewed? Will it impact their business positively? Because any business innovation has to add value, and you can't just innovate for the sake of innovating. So, depending on what the kind of innovation you're doing and what kind of value and you're expecting, if there is value add and if they're convinced by that, then there is no issue at all. In fact, most funds or most PE companies or venture capitalists, they would want innovation to come in because that's the only way to stay ahead of others. So, but ultimately, innovation has to create value to me. And just to again sum up what you're asking is that basically their judgment in terms of will it create value will drive their support or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree. You know, if you look for the investor's perspective, you know, if you refer to investors like, you know, a family setting up its own family office and becoming an investor, you know, a professional investor of its own, you know, wealth and things like this, then I think there is an increasing interest in everything which is related to society. Again, you know, impact investing, stakeholder engagement are all things that emerge quite clearly from the observatory on Italian family offices that I, for instance, lead. At the same time, you know, even if you look at investors like international funds or whoever, they are more and more interested in family firms because if on the one hand, we know that family firms are characterized by some issues, right? Sometimes. Before, Harsh Mariwala was mentioning the issue of professionalization, which I fully agree. You know, it's very difficult because sometimes it's very difficult to create the right environment for a professional to join from outside and be happy to stay there and exercise his own autonomy, his or her own autonomy. But at the same time, we also know that family firms, if you look at international data, first of all, you know, outperform their non-family counterparts. Second, differently from what we typically believe, and I've done and published a global study on this, they grow more than their non-family counterparts. I did a study published in Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice with data from, you know, basically family firms from all over the world, showing that they grow more than their non-family counterparts. So I think there are many positive things that are in this type of business that are attracting, you know, investors in this kind of organization, without mentioning, for instance, the tradition that, again, you know, if you consider it as an asset, we know that family firms have you know, a very visible tradition that is often handed over from one generation to the next. I'm facing more and more often these days, you know, institutional investors or other type of investors who ask me to connect them with, for instance, family firms in Italy because they really want to invest in something with a multi-generational strong tradition, you know, where all these things can play a value. In many cases, we have also to consider that when investors make an investment in a family-run business, at some point they will, you know, they will ask to also, you know, professionalize it if it's not, if this has not yet been done. And this would open up a completely different, let's say, Pandora's vase. This opens up a number of challenges, because professionalizing a family business is very, very difficult, because in the end, it's first and foremost about changing the culture. And we know that families are likely, you know, are willing to control, that families, you know, are not so happy to introduce decisions made based on policies, based on, you know, formalizing tools and things, because all these things constrain the power, the discretion of the family owners.
So, all right, great. I think we've had a lovely discussion. We've had some new concepts which probably could form new research themes in the family firm literature, especially this whole concept of responsible innovations. What is the construct that one would like to use around it within family firms? Would it be an extension of the SEW, or would it be a totally new construct? right? So those are, and what would be the tensions, what could be the trade-offs between the family's other goals and the socially centered goals. From Mr. Mariwala, we heard some excellent points about the need to have a perpetual innovation engine for which we need to build talent within family businesses. How do you look at professionalization? How do you build a culture which will promote responsible innovations? And that is to be done through tolerating failure, through encouraging failure of a certain sort. So we've had an excellent discussion, and thank you to all of you who have attended. I'll request my team to put up the slides so that we tell you about the next step conversation series 2. We already have the speakers for the second step conversation series, and we will be joined in the second series by Tanya Lipaho, Professor Sarah Jack, and Andrea Calibro in conversation with me on internationalization of family firms with specific reference to small family firms. The dates are yet to be finalized, but we're looking forward to doing this in the new year, possibly in January or February of 2024. And we look forward to welcoming you all back again. If I may request all of you to please switch on your camera so that we can take your video so that we can take a picture. Thank you all so much for a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just take one picture,
Yeah.
please.
Please switch on your cameras, please.
Just tell us once you're done, Dhanashri.
You won't be there, Tulsi. I'm getting a little late. Can I leave? Or,
Yes, I think
Yes.
we are done. Okay.
done, sir,
we are
Thank you
done.
so
We are
much.
done.
Thanks, Mr. Mariwala. We'll see you on campus in a couple of days. And thanks
Yes.
so much, Alfredo. We'll see you in Italy.
Thank
next
you.
month.
And it was a pleasure also to know you, Mr. Mariwala.
Thank you, Samir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Alfredo.
you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Varun. Thanks, all of you. Thanks to the CFB committee and all the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Lisa. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.